Hey again, YouTube. Hey, it's been a little while. I hope you guys are all doing well. Well, due to some medical issues, I've been investigating our diet and looking at changes I need to make. As I've learned, our American diet really bites. So it's time to make some changes, and the video we're talking about now is specifically looking at spelt flour, an ancient grain, and we're dealing with the spelt berries. We're actually going to grind the berries, make flour, and then I'm delving into making pasta. And I've played with a few different things, and this recipe I've got, it's obviously not triple O flour, so it's not the real fine pasta that you're used to, but it's kind of a healthy compromise. So we got a lot more protein, we've got a lot more fiber, we've got the vitamins and minerals and micronutrients that you get from spelt flour, but obviously there's a little give and take. So I did start with 100% pure spelt, and you have to be a pretty crunchy granola person to like that. It was edible, but it certainly wasn't great. So we're doing a little compromise. We've got some other flour in there. We'll show you as we progress, and the result we have now is actually really good. I really like it. It's obviously not the very soft whatever triple O pasta. It's not going to make any. You're not going to find it in a restaurant. Let's say that. But it's certainly doable, certainly edible, and like I said, you've got the nutrients back in it. So anyway, we're going to head back into the kitchen, and I'll show you what I've come up with. We start with a cup of berries. This is, like I said in the intro, this is spelt berry. And we're using the KitchenAid mixer with the grinding mill attachment. And this is, and I've got it set at the finest grind. It still doesn't grind it fine enough, but we'll deal with that in a second. This is all very straightforward, so I'm going to fast forward this, but I'm keeping it in the video for anybody that's not familiar with this process. Even though we had this grinder set to the finest grind, it still ends up being a little bit coarse. So I'm going to go a little off the edge here. I don't know if this is a thing you do or not. No one's told me not to do it. So I'm going to do a double grind, because again, I want my flour to be as fine as possible. One thing I've learned is that the flour, once it's ground, it's a little bit sticky, and the grinder is obviously intended for berries. So you have to be careful feeding the flour into the hopper, because it doesn't want to drop down very well. So you need to feed it slowly into the auger, and stuff that doesn't actually fall into the auger, you might have to give it a little bit of help. So to help get the last of the flour down into the auger, I've marked on a spoon where the auger is, and make sure you use wood, because if the auger catches it, it's going in. You're going to eat it. So try and stay above that line where the auger is, and the idea is to lift the flour out of the auger, and then it'll just fall down in. But make sure you keep yourself clear of it, because it'll grab that whatever you're using and suck it in. Once you've milled your grain twice, you have actually some pretty fine flour, but there's still a lot of fiber in it, a lot of the outer shell of the grain. So we're going to take one more step just to make our flour a little smoother for the pasta. I've shopped around and found a pretty fine mesh screen. So we're going to go ahead and sift this freshly ground flour, and you'll be surprised how much fiber, how much coarse material there actually is in there. I don't remember what it's called, but it's the outer shell of the grain. That's where all the fiber is. And so we're not removing all of it, but we're removing a good chunk of the coarse material after the grind, after milling. And it does make a significant difference to your pasta. Well, now that we have our spelt ready, we're going to be adding bread flour, which again is fairly high protein. Like this King Arthur, it actually works really well. And we're going to add probably about 3/4 of a cup, most of a cup. And going forward, all the flour that we use from here on out is going to be this King Arthur bread flour. And we need to talk about salt. Some people are going to want to add salt, some people are not. If you're adding salt, this is the stage I would do it. I would add it to your flour. Salt is really kind of a personal thing. If I remember to do it, I usually add salt, but more often than not, I don't remember. This pasta does cook a long time, it's 7 to 10 minutes, so you can add salt to your cooking water as well, and it'll tend to penetrate the pasta just because of the cooking time. The fresh spelt absorbs a lot of moisture. So normally if I'd used all bread flour, I'd probably only be using 2 eggs. But with more or less 2 cups of flour and the spelt, I go ahead and start with 3 eggs, and I'm more likely as not going to have to add another egg, and which will end up being too much, and we'll bring in some flour later on to dry things up. We'll just kind of have to wait and see how things go. Yeah, you can see with 3 eggs that it's just not enough. We're not working all the flour in. So I'm going to add another egg. You could use a little bit of water if you wanted to, but I'm going to add another egg, and it will be too much. And then we'll just use more of the King Arthur flour to absorb the excess egg. At this point, everything is really just kind of by feel. And just work that other egg in. And I don't know if you can tell from the video, but the dough is still a little bit damp. So we're going to add some flour. And it really is just working with the dough and get familiar with it. I like to get to the dough where it's dry, where it doesn't, dry-ish. It doesn't stick to my hands. But when you work it, the moisture comes back out and you can feel the stickiness. So then a little more flour on the outside and work it, and you can gradually feel the stickiness. And I kind of like it at that stage where it's dry in my hand, it doesn't stick to my hand, but when I knead it a little bit, you can feel that stickiness coming out. When I'm happy with the consistency of the dough, then I get it out on the countertop and knead it. And I honestly can't tell you how much to knead it, or I mean, it's just working with the dough and getting the handle on it. Trial and error, I guess. I've only done this a few times, so I'm still. But again, it hasn't failed either. So I think there's a whole lot of room for error. Now, obviously, I'm not making restaurant quality pasta here just because of the flours we're using. So someone that makes pasta for a living or makes pasta in a restaurant, they're just going to kind of roll my eyes at me and say I have no clue what I'm doing, which is exactly true. But, it's hard to argue with results. I've been really happy. The end result has been really good. So I hope other people can make this work for them too. So the best I can tell you is I just knead it. I work it until it's nice and smooth, and it's quite stiff. It'll work back into itself, but it does take some work to do that. And so I work it into basically into a ball once I'm happy with the kneading of it. And then it goes in a bowl. And a lot of people wrap it in plastic. You do whatever you want. But anyway, we're going to stick it in the fridge for 20 or 30 minutes. And according to other people I've listened to, that helps the gluten to relax, whatever that means. While the dough is resting in the fridge, then I go ahead and get my pasta machine set up. And I haven't yet got one for my KitchenAid, but that is in the near future. This recipe that we're making today, it basically makes enough pasta for 4 servings. So you have a few options. Once you get your rested ball out, you can flour your countertop. And I like to divide this ball of dough into 4 sections. First of all, the quarters are easier to work with while you're preparing your actual noodles. And if you're not going to be cooking the whole batch, then you're storing them in single servings. So these quarters that we're cutting up now, they can be floured and then go back in the fridge for a day or two before you use them, or once you flour them up, they can go in the freezer. And then when you're needing to make some pasta, you can grab 1/4 per person and let it thaw out and go ahead and work it, or prepare those noodles and keep them in separate batches of 1/4 of the ball. So from here, there really isn't any difference, any significant difference from any pasta that you're going to do. It's just working it through your pasta machine, and you're going to fold it 3 or 4 times, and then gradually work down your thickness, and then run it through your cutter. It's very conventional. Keep everything well floured. Again, this is very sticky dough, so you want to make sure you keep it well floured. And if you're pre-cutting your noodles and then storing them, you want to make sure you keep it very well floured even after you've cut the noodles, because they will stick together. So when you do your little nest of noodles, again, make sure they're well floured. Now, I don't dry these noodles. I freeze them right after I cut them, or I go ahead and cook them right after I cut them. I don't really see any point in in drying them. First of all, they become brittle, so there's a good chance they're going to break. Plus, it's very time-consuming, and you need a drying rack and a place to set them, and then you need to store them where they're going to be safe from damage. So yeah, I just nest them together and then put them in a Ziploc and right in the freezer. Now when this dough starts going through the roller, you're going to see that it looks very rough. And honestly, it's a lot coarser than the triple O flour is going to be. But the more you work it through the machine, you're going to fold it 3 or 4 times, and then you're going to stretch it out. And it ends up being a really nice smooth dough, and the noodles end up coming out really nice. And depending on how thin you make them, they actually are quite light. I was pleasantly surprised on how good this pasta was. The rest of this video is just working the dough, running it through the machine, and then running it through the cutter. So for anybody that's done pasta, this is very familiar. There's no point in me really narrating it for you. But if anybody doesn't have the experience with doing this, then I'm going to let the video run so you have a visual of what it looks like to work the pasta into noodles. I hope this information is helpful for you. I hope you find this is a good recipe and that it's usable. I hope you'll like and subscribe, and make sure to check the description down below. I'll have some links that might be helpful for you. You guys have a great day, and I'll watch for you in another video. Thank you.